Yes, I said the allegations. Pincher said yesterday that he respected the Prime Minister's decision to suspend the whip and would cooperate fully with an inquiry into his behaviour. He said he was truly sorry, but this is the bit that I want to hear from you. He said he hoped to return to his duties as an MP as soon as possible. Well, that's it, eh? Nothing more to see here. Move along, come on, what are you staring at? There's nothing going on, all right? Man sins, man repents, man gets promoted again. Now, I know some of you were saying this isn't how it used to be. I'm not sure this is how it's meant to be, but it does feel like this is how it's going to be. Makes the crimes of someone like Jonathan Aitken, who went to prison back in the day for perjury, seem like small beer. No wonder Andrew Bridgen, of all people, who's had his own problems of probity after being criticised in court, he's accusing Downing Street of double standards. He points to Neil Parish, who had to stand down as an MP after admitting to watching porn in the House of Commons. But Bridgen senses a different outcome for Pincher, who, lest we forget, has previous. And this is what Bridgen said. Neil was a very independent-minded backbencher. He never really sought patronage. Pincher, on the other hand, is seen as an arch loyalist, and I think that will be the reason for the difference in their treatment, and that's not tenable either. Now, I'm not sure about the last bit. How can you be when our PM is the first in history to have his own collar felt, to have apparently misled Parliament and the country over Partygate? He's lost by-elections brought on by sleaze and still insists he's going nowhere till 2030 something. But Pincher faces an investigation by Parliament's complaints watchdog following all these allegations. If he seeks medical help for his issues, whatever they may be, and I'm sure some of you have some theories, some thoughts and theories on that. If he seeks medical help, if he sorts himself out, should he continue as an MP? Should he one day be promoted once again to some kind of whip within the Tory party? What do you say to that? 0345 6060 973 is the number. Isn't everybody entitled to make a mess of things? Yeah? Sort themselves out, be forgiven, and move on with their lives. I mean, it's a very American-sounding thing, isn't it? You do bad as a high-profile public figure. Some of the preachers back in the 80s, the TV evangelists, get caught having affairs, get caught seeing prostitutes, get caught doing drugs, go into rehab, come out, say they're sorry, pray to God for forgiveness, and then carry on as usual. Is that what's going to happen here, I wonder? Well, Claire Purcell is a political commentator and former special advisor to Caroline Noakes, the immigration minister at the Home Office, and Caroline Noakes is one of those that's calling for a zero tolerance.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Turns Lane, A355.
Claire?
Morning, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm a bit torn on this because there's a in my heart, I do believe in a second chance. But when you see somebody in Parliament,
Keep right.
I expect higher standards of them from the start. So I'm not sure.
And we've spoken about these things so much over the last 12 months and nothing seems to change. I do wonder how long we can just keep forgiving people.
Does it matter about the behaviour of the man in number 10? Does that have any bearing here? That we've seen stories in recent...
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
Connor Burns, the MP who then subsequently got promoted twice, who's had his collar felt, and a lot of people might think there's a lot of sleaze going on around number 10. How can the Prime Minister act when he himself perhaps is immersed in sleaze against someone like Pincher?
Well, I don't think you can discount it, and I've always said that the person at the top is the one who sets the tone for the behaviour. So if it is seen as an acceptable way to behave, and that you'll get away with it, and you can laugh it off in a sort of blokey way, then people are going to say, "Oh, well, it's okay, I can do that." And unfortunately, I say
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
mostly men who are partaking in this behaviour.
I'm not going to argue with you there. Can I don't want to sound like an apologist, but I wanted to explore the alcohol issue, which I'm mindful of the fact that Chris Pincher, while he said he drank an awful lot to the Prime Minister, he hasn't admitted to anything like alcoholism, so I'm not talking about him directly here. But alcohol can make people make bad decisions. You said very fairly that if somebody had an alcohol problem, that if it was dealt with, there could be a way back for them. Is it...
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
An alcohol problem, that the alcohol problem would lead to poor behaviour, the the kind of poor behaviour that you and I might struggle to forgive, or I just wonder whether we're tying ourselves in knots. We would forgive someone if they admitted to an alcohol problem, but we wouldn't necessarily forgive their bad behaviour while they were on alcohol.
I mean, this is a really tricky one, and I've sort of thought about it a lot over the last 24 hours, and access to alcohol doesn't make good people do bad things. I think it makes some people do bad things, and you have to look at the kind of people that you elect into Parliament. Those people who become politicians generally are more of a risk taker. Their behaviour is slightly different to the majority of us who would perhaps go for a glass of wine at the end of a day. So I think there's an awful lot more. It's not a very simple problem as just with the answer of ban alcohol in Parliament. I don't think that works, and I think we have to be a little bit careful about what we call for, but to look at the kind of person that we attract into politics has to be a good starting place, because I think it's that atmosphere and that type of person that goes wrong.
So it's really, really interesting what you're saying there. I mean, I've been to Westminster many times, and to the various bars I'm allowed into and the restaurants, and coming from a Fleet Street background, back in the early 90s, just about every newspaper building had its own in-house bar. I mean, extraordinary. The Daily Express, when it was on Blackfriars, I mean, there was a little sort of secret panel on the ground floor, and you went in, it was essentially a pub. But the newspapers, they've turned their back on all that. It doesn't happen anymore. All the in-house bars have gone, all the cash handouts to reporters to go and get leathered on a Friday night, they've all gone. Fleet Street's cleaned up its act, but Parliament's awash with bars, subsidised bars, and even though I'm aware that Chris Pincher's misbehaviour has actually happened outside of Parliament in the Carlton Club, I mean, I can appreciate that there's a place for perhaps a restaurant within the Palace of Westminster, and the idea that you can have a vast number of subsidised bars, I don't understand why that's the case. I think Parliament might be a better place without them.
Well, to be honest, I don't disagree, and I've been there a long time now, and I've seen very different levels of behaviour. And sometimes, I'm not standing up for the whole culture here, but it is nice to go for a drink and actually catch up with people that I don't see very often because I'm busy working or I'm out and about, and you catch up with a lot of people. But that doesn't say that you need to have it there every day and so many. I think we need to perhaps look at the opening times, look at every other licensed premises around the area and see what they do, and treat it much more professionally. I think we have all taken it for granted that Parliament is a very different workplace, and that has led to this kind of behaviour. And as I said to you, I'm not in favour of straight out banning everything as a knee-jerk reaction, but I do think we need to look at it. Is it causing problems? Is it causing addiction issues in people that could do with some help and actually have those places shut down? Now, I think it's much more complicated than just having one soundbite saying close them.
Agreed. Claire Pessel, I'm really indebted to you for kicking off the show this morning with a very fair and balanced appraisal of the situation that Chris Pincher and indeed many other people within the House of Commons, and indeed the House of Lords, might find themselves in. I'm going to go straight to Dr. Robert Lefevre, who's a former GP and addiction specialist, spoken to him before, author of Kick Your Habit. Robert, good morning. Lovely to talk to you. The culture of drinking in Westminster, I mean, I take Claire's point, it's nice to catch up with people at the end of the day, or perhaps in the middle of the day, or indeed at breakfast, but we don't really need subsidised bars in the House of Commons or the House of Lords when there's loads of pubs in the area, do we, Robert?
I don't think so. I think that Parliament needs to be responsible to its members and to its constituents. And, you know, having so much alcohol around is not the way to do it.
I mean, they've never even tried, as far as I know. Someone's just messaged it. Paul, he's just texted me, said they've never even tried an alcohol ban in Parliament, so how would they know it wouldn't work? I mean, it's got to be worth a try, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is a responsible thing to do, considering that parliamentarians are the representatives of the people. Now, they do represent the people accurately, because if there's an incidence of alcoholism and other problems of addiction in one kind or another, the behavioural ones as well as the substance ones, it's about 1 in 5 of the population. Well, we've got 650 MPs, so that means that over 100 MPs who have problems.
I hear you.
passive behavior of one kind or another. And that's a huge number, but that's representative of the population.
Now, when I've spoken to you in the past, you've talked about your own addictive personality very fairly, very frankly. I'm just wondering, I hate to put you in a sort of a seat of judgment, but we were talking to Claire Pearsall, and she was discussing Chris Pincher and the notion that she might be able to forgive an MP who has an alcohol problem, who says they're an alcoholic and goes for help, goes for treatment. But she would find it very difficult to accept that same person back into Parliament if their behaviour whilst on alcohol was untoward, so sexual, violent, whatever. You know about what alcohol does to people. Should we be more forgiving of the kind of negative behaviours that might come from someone when they've fallen into their cups? And if so, should the door be open for somebody like Chris Pincher to return to sort of frontline politics?
Well, Mr. Pincher says that he's asking for medical help. It depends in my mind as to what he's looking for and what he's likely to get. If he's looking just to make an excuse for his behavior, I've got no time for that at all. If, on the other hand, he wants to know why he behaves in the way he does, psychologically, then I think that's fair enough, and we could help him in that direction. But the issue is, what's he likely to get? My experience of university and medical school for 6 years was that I had 2 years of pharmacology and therapeutics. That's drugs, prescribe. But in 6 years, I had not one single lesson on human psychology of why people do what they do. There's something fundamentally wrong in medical education, and the General Medical Council has to take responsibility for that. They're at fault. So I'm not going to blame Parliament as such, but I do blame the General Medical Council because they're responsible for how doctors are trained.
Dr. Robert Lefebvre, addiction specialist, pleasure talking to you as per. Really interesting debate. I'm tying myself up in mental knots as I'm listening to all the arguments out there. We're fundamentally asking whether somebody like Chris Pincher could be forgiven if they seek help, if they try and mend their character flaws, and if they do that, should they then be welcomed back into frontline politics? 0345 6060 973, the number for your thoughts. Time for some headlines now from Holly Harris.
Ministers say they've made changes to staff vetting at airports to try to tackle the queues and delays before the summer holidays. Former Conservative Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher is facing fresh allegations after being suspended by Boris Johnson. Stefanos Tsitsipas has accused his Wimbledon opponent Nick Kyrgios of bullying and evil behaviour after losing to the Australian on court 1 last night. The weather, sunny spells and showers for most. The showers heaviest in the east, a high of 22 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Chorner. In West London on the M4, it's blocked at junction 1 for the Chiswick roundabout to junction...
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
One lane's closed eastbound, heading out of London between junction 4 for Heathrow and junction 3 for Heston. That's because of ongoing roadworks that are due to finish this Friday. The Blackwall Tunnel is closed on the southbound side from the A13 turn-off for Poplar to Greenwich. That's because of ongoing roadworks, and waterworks mean that the Crayford Road is closed between Tower Park Road and Roman Way. Finally, looking on the underground, there's no service on the Piccadilly line between Acton Town and Uxbridge. That's because of weekend engineering works.
This is LBC.
Making that first cup of coffee and feeling the heat from the kitchen tiles. Gently warm your bare feet. At Swale Heating, we help you stay warm. As well as installing efficient boilers, such as Worcester Brush, we can provide underfloor heating too. Visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
In the UK, 1.4 million households use 100% renewable electricity from Shell.
And that's just the beginning.
Shell experts are working on a wind project that could power 6 million homes.
And because 1 in 5 new cars in the UK plug in,
Shell aims to have 100,000 public charge points nationwide by the end of the decade.
The UK is ready for cleaner energy. To be part of the change, search Shell. Shell Energy's renewable electricity is supplied by the National Grid and certified by Regos. Visit shellenergy.co.uk for details. Electric vehicle data source by SMMT.
Excuse me, airport security. Did you pack this bag yourself, madam?
Yeah,
What's this then?
my post office travel money card.
Right. And this?
Oh, that's my post office travel insurance.
I knew that. Anything else to declare?
Yeah, they even sorted my passport for me.
Really?
Wherever you're headed, always pack the post office. Search post office travel or visit your local branch. Card issued by First Rate Exchange Services Limited, pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. T's and C's apply.
Everyone's got an exit.
In a quarter of a mile at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
The Nectar card.
No, the Nectar app.
Eh? With Nectar you can collect unspent points at Argos and Sainsbury's.
But with the app, there's also personalised discounts and bonus points on products you buy most at Sainsbury's.
But
Plus hundreds of brands to discover and collect points at.
Exit at junction 3.
And just eat.
what?
Nectar. Get the app. Get more. Personalised discounts require smart shop exclusions apply. For full T's and C's, visit nectar.com/app-terms.
Leading.
In a quarter of a mile at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Matthew, it might be interesting to introduce random alcohol testing in the Commons and Lords. By all means, drink after work, but drinking in the workplace while matters of such importance are being considered? Come on. I like this one from someone called Hysteria Lane. If these vile Tory behaviours were being carried out by a bunch of working class football supporters, would you be having balanced radio discussions about the effects of addiction on our actions and talking of forgiveness? Or would there be calls for arrests? Fair comment, I say. 03456060973 is the number if you'd like to have a word. We'll talk to Mike first in Hertfordshire. Morning, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. What would you like to tell us?
What I'd like to say is that if I'm stopped by the police for drink driving or for a drugs offence, then I'm going to be taken to the police station, I'm going to be processed, I'm going to lose my licence for at least a year, and I'm going to have a criminal record. I've done no damage whatsoever to any other vehicle. I've just been stopped. Now, I'm not anti-drinking. People drink and drink within moderation, and I have no problem with that. But somebody that goes to the Carlton Club, a conservative club, is going there to further their career. If I'm stopped for drink driving...
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
No damage, but the reason is that my judgment is impaired. And it's impaired because of the limit of alcohol or drugs.
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
Has got out of his skull at a conservative club. He's obviously there for business. It's not his granny's 100th birthday or anything like that. He's there to further his career. Now the point is, the following morning, he's gone into work. Whatever's happened, I'm not quite sure. But the mere fact that he's scheduled to turn up to work the following day, having had a skinful the night before, he is impaired. He's taking the taxpayers' money for a job he cannot do.
I'll tell you the point.
It's absolutely outrageous. And nobody's picking it up.
So you're saying essentially that it is impossible for any individual to function effectively at work if they're carrying a raging hangover with them.
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is there are certain jobs...
You said if you've had a skinful in his face that he'd be unable to function well the next day. So that is essentially exactly what I just said. Unable to function because he had a skinful. So we do agree, don't we, Mike? Yeah. We do agree.
I didn't come on the radio to have a fight with you, and if you listen to the words that I've said, I'm not anti-drinking.
No, I didn't say you were.
But what I'm saying is...
In a quarter of a mile at Wagoners Roundabout, take the 2nd exit and stay on the Parkway A312.
Forgiveness, Mike. What about forgiveness? Would you not? I totally agree with what you said so far, by the way, 100%. Without any deviance, I agree. But what about forgiveness? He's saying he's going to go off and get help. If he gets help, you will. So you're driving an actually. One day you get your driving license back, don't you? After a year, maybe 2, depending on how bad it was, you get your driving license back. You can continue driving. In this instance, we could end up, for someone like Neil Parish, in his case, Paul, his career is over, I would imagine. He'll never come back to politics. But Chris Pincher is trying to come back to politics. He's hoping that, once he's sorted himself out, he will be forgiven and we can all move on. Should we? Or is he in a different position?
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
you've burnt your bridges, you're out, mate.
Well, the first thing is that if it's a drink drive offence, it's going to be probably a year or more ban. If you have a criminal record in Parliament of a year or more, you're out anyway. You're literally out. You can't have a record of more than a year or more, and still remain an MP.
All right, Mike. And that's the thing is that it's exactly right, that he can remain an MP unless his own constituents decide to get rid of him. Mike, lovely talking to you. I'm going to change tack ever so quickly, but I promise I will return to Chris Pincher, so keep the calls coming in. I want to talk briefly about guns and the judges in America's Supreme Court. More than 390 million guns are owned by Americans. In 2020, more than 45,000 Americans died from firearms-related injuries. And there have already been 227 mass shootings in the US this year to date. Now, to many outside the US of A, that would sound like madness. But last week, the Supreme Court decided to tear up a New York state gun control law, essentially making it easier for citizens to carry a weapon as they go about. These are the same judges, of course, that overturned Roe Wade, essentially allowing states to ban abortion. What is going on with these judges? What is going on with guns? And how is New York going to react? Mike Yardley is a firearms expert, joins me on the line now. Morning, Mike.
Good morning, Matthew.
I mean, America and guns, what a twistedly difficult relationship it is.
It's a very incredibly complicated subject. Let me try and put it into a bit of context for you. New York has always had stricter gun laws than most other parts of America. This began in 1911 with something called the Sullivan laws. So whereas, you could openly carry guns in other states, one thinks of Texas and other places, you couldn't in New York. They always made it difficult. They were worried about organized crime. Now, looking at gun ownership in America, roughly speaking, half of America owns a gun, and they usually own two guns, and they tend to, most people who own a gun tend to the political right. And that seems to be the result of, the research. That's not absolutely true, but it's generally true. Now, what is interesting, and I've found out from my own research recently, that the numbers of gun homicides in America, which used to be about 10 or 11,000, doubled under lockdown. They went to 20,000 under lockdown. Now, that is an extraordinary statistic. Meantime, the other thing which I find extraordinary in the States, and I have actually worked for as a sort of consultant for the US NRA in London, and I stopped working for them because I didn't approve of their position on assault rifles. But manufacturers in America have sold to civilians something like 10 million assault rifles. So that's like an Armalite rifle, except it doesn't fire on fully automatic.
Extraordinary. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
It is. I think as far as selling those sort of weapons to civilians, yes, it is a crazy policy, what they've done. But the trouble is, the horse has already bolted, and you do have a vast number of guns floating around in the States. And in some places, people do have...
In a quarter of